My name is Adriana Cole. I'm 22 years old. 2 weeks ago, I stood on a graduation stage in front of 3,000 people. While my parents, the same 2 people who once decided I wasn't worth the investment, sat in the front row with their confidence slowly draining from their faces. They weren't there for me. They were there for my twin brother. Ethan had always been the headline, the one who filled a room without trying. When my parents secured front row seats at Whitmore University's commencement, they believed they were reserving the perfect view of his future. They didn't know I was graduating with honors. They definitely didn't know I would be delivering the keynote. When the university president announced, "Please welcome this year's valedictorian," my name echoed across the stadium. For a second, my parents didn't move. Then I stood, from 20 feet away. I watched my father lower his camera, not intentionally. His hands just stopped working. The acceptance letters arrived on the same Tuesday afternoon in April. 2 thick envelopes, same address, same last name, same DNA, different futures. Ethan got into Whitmore University, private, prestigious, $68,000 a year, the kind of school that manufactures confidence before you've done anything to earn it. I got into Brookhaven State, solid, accredited, $26,000 a year, not glamorous, just real. That night, my father called what he liked to label a family strategy meeting. We sat in the living room. He took his usual seat in the leather armchair, legs crossed, fingers steepled like he was presenting quarterly projections. My mother perched on the edge of the couch. Ethan leaned against the mantel, already smiling. I sat across from my father with my acceptance letter folded neatly in my lap. "Let's talk numbers," he began. He didn't ask how we felt. He didn't ask what we wanted. Whitmore, he explained, was an investment. Elite alumni networks, executive pipelines, rooms that mattered. He looked at Ethan. "You thrive in competitive environments." Then he turned to me. "Brookhaven is practical, affordable, a reasonable option." His tone shifted, not cruel, just clinical. "We'll be covering Ethan's tuition in full. Room, board, everything." Ethan exhaled softly. My mother's hand found his shoulder. Then my father looked at me. "We won't be funding your education." The sentence didn't land at first. "I'm sorry," I asked. "You're intelligent?" "Adriana, no one disputes that," he said evenly. "But you don't command attention. You're not assertive in the way executive spaces require." He paused. "There's no clear return on investment." The words felt like an audit of my existence. I glanced at my mother. She was staring at her hands. Ethan wasn't gloating. He just looked relieved. "You'll figure it out." My father continued. "You're disciplined, resourceful, like I was being assigned a coping mechanism instead of support." "So I pay for it myself?" I asked. He shrugged. "Take loans? Plenty of people do. It's not personal," he added. "It's strategic." Strategic. That was the moment I understood. I wasn't the disappointment. I was the low-yield asset. And my father was reallocating capital. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I went upstairs, closed my bedroom door, and sat on the edge of my bed in complete silence. Something shifted that night, not in them, in me. The college meeting wasn't the beginning. It was just the first time my father said it out loud. The favoritism had always been there, subtle enough to deny, obvious enough to scar. When we turned 16, Ethan walked into the driveway and found a brand new silver Audi with a red bow stretched across the hood. My father handed him the keys like he was transferring ownership of a future. "You'll need independence," he said proudly. That same afternoon, I received Ethan's old laptop. The battery lasted 40 minutes. The screen had a thin crack running diagonally through the corner, like a fault line. "We can't afford 2 cars," my mother told me gently, "but we could afford Ethan's ski trips. His senior year tour of Italy and France, his summer leadership conference in Zurich. Every December, his gifts came wrapped in thick, embossed paper with satin ribbon. Mine were practical. A planner, a desk lamp, a budgeting workbook. Investments versus utilities. Family vacations were the clearest illustration. Ethan always had his own hotel room. "He needs space for calls," my father would say. "Networking never sleeps." I slept on pull-out couches. Once, in what the resort brochure called a convertible lounge alcove. It was a storage closet with a fold-down bed. In every family photo, Ethan stood centered, shoulders squared, my father's hand on his back. I stood slightly off to the side, sometimes cropped at the shoulder, once, entirely out of frame. When I was 17, I asked my mother quietly in the kitchen, "Why does it feel like he matters more?" She sighed like I'd asked something unreasonable. "That's in your head, Adriana. We love you both the same. Love may be equal. Resources weren't." A few months before the college meeting, I saw my mother's phone unlocked on the counter. I wasn't searching for anything. It was simply there. A message thread with Aunt Claire. "Harold thinks Ethan has real executive potential. Adriana is steady, but she doesn't stand out. We have to be realistic about where we put our resources." Resources. I put the phone down carefully, closed my bedroom door, sat on the floor. I didn't feel angry. Anger would have meant I expected something different. What I felt was clarity. If I wasn't the priority, then I was free from competing for it. That night, I opened the cracked laptop and stared at the blinking cursor in the search bar. For years, I'd been trying to outscore, outperform, outshine my brother. That night, I stopped trying to beat Ethan and started trying to build something that didn't require permission. I sat on my bedroom floor with a spiral notebook, a calculator, and the kind of focus that only comes from realizing no one is coming to rescue you. Brookhaven State, $26,000, 000 per year, 4 years, $140,000, ling. Parent contribution, my savings from summer jobs, babysitting, retail shifts, tutoring algebra, barely $5,000. The gap wasn't intimidating. It was suffocating. I wrote out my options. Option 1, don't go. Option 2, take out 6 figures in loans and spend the next 20 years repaying a decision I didn't make. Option 3, work full-time, stretch 4 years into 7, crawl to the finish line exhausted. Every scenario ended the same way, proving my father right. I stared at the numbers until they blurred. Then I flipped to a clean page. If I couldn't rely on family capital, I would manufacture my own. I started digging. Scholarship databases, merit awards, need-based grants, essay competitions. Some were outdated, some were scams. Most required near-perfect GPAs, recommendation letters, documented independence. I bookmarked everything. Then, I found Brookhaven's internal merit program. 5 students per year, full tuition, small living stipend, highly competitive. I circled it twice. Buried deeper in a national directory was another name. The Hawthorne Fellowship, full ride, annual stipend, 20 recipients nationwide. Partner institutions included several private universities. It sounded unattainable, designed for students raised to believe they belonged in rooms like that. I bookmarked it anyway, because here's what I understood that night. If the competition is brutal, fewer people apply who believe they're worthy, and I had nothing left to lose. I mapped out income streams: campus cafe, residence hall cleaning crew, peer tutoring, if I qualified. The schedule I drafted looked unsustainable. 5A, shifts, full course loads, late-night study sessions. It wasn't designed for comfort. It was designed for autonomy. For the first time in my life, I wasn't searching for approval. I was searching for leverage. And somewhere inside those spreadsheets and scholarship forms, the balance sheet my father believed he controlled began to fracture. Freshman year began at 4. My alarm didn't ring. It vibrated against a thin plywood nightstand in a rented room that smelled faintly of old paint and detergent. I would sit up before it stopped, swing my feet onto the cold floor, and tell myself the same word every morning: Sisha-woo. I was behind the counter at the campus cafe, apron tied, hair pulled back, hands already smelling like burnt espresso. Most customers didn't know my name. I was medium roast or oat milk. No foam. I was in lectures. By afternoon, the library. By evening, cleaning residence hall bathrooms in rubber gloves that were always slightly too big. 4 hours of sleep became normal. 5 felt indulgent. Walking back to my apartment before sunrise, I kept my keys threaded between my fingers. The campus felt different in the dark, quieter, less forgiving. I never told my parents about that part. They weren't funding my life. They didn't need access to its risks. Thanksgiving freshman year was the first real fracture. I couldn't afford a flight home. Even if I could, I wasn't sure I would have gone. I called anyway. My mother answered. Laughter and clinking dishes echoed behind her. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said. "Happy Thanksgiving. Honey. A word that felt automatic. Is Dad there? A pause. Then, faintly in the background, tell her I'm busy. He's carving the turkey, my mother said quickly. Of course he was. After we hung up, I looked at the cup of instant ramen on my desk. Steam curled upward, thin and temporary. I opened social media against my better judgment. A photo. My parents and Ethan at the dining table. Candles lit. Wine glasses raised. 3 place settings. Not 4. They hadn't even set an empty plate. That was the night something in me recalibrated. Up until then, the grind had been fueled by a quiet hope that one day they would see the effort and adjust their equation. That hope went silent. In its place came discipline. Sophomore year blurred into repetition. Class. Library. Repeat. I fainted once behind the counter mid-shift. Dehydration, the campus clinic said. Exhaustion. I returned to work the next morning. Another night. Sitting alone in my car after a tutoring session. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. Not crying. Just breathing through the weight of it. I wasn't angry. Anger looks backward. I was building forward. By the end of sophomore year, my GPA was a 4. Not because I was effortlessly brilliant, because failure wasn't an option. Each exam felt less like a grade and more like structural reinforcement. Junior year, professors began remembering my name, inviting me to office hours, asking about research interests. I didn't walk taller, but internally, something stabilized. The narrative my father had assigned steady, unremarkable. Low yield began to fracture, quietly, one sunrise shift at a time, one paper at a time, one exhausted, determined step at a time. I missed birthdays, missed holidays, missed every family gathering except the ones I saw online after the fact. Ethan thrived at Whitmore internship photos, leadership retreats, smiling alumni mixers. We rarely spoke, and somewhere between 4 alarms and midnight study sessions, I stopped feeling like the overlooked twin. I started feeling like infrastructure, not flashy, but foundational, invisible to my family, no longer invisible to myself. Professor Eleanor Hart had a reputation at Brookhaven. Brilliant, demanding, unimpressed. She had published in every major economics journal that mattered. Students said she hadn't given an A in years, that grade inflation. In her words, was intellectual laziness. I sat in the 3rd row of her advanced microeconomics class and kept my head down. The first paper she assigned was ruthless, 20 pages, analyzing market inefficiencies under asymmetric information. Most of the class complained before they even began. I didn't. I treated it like everything else. Wake up, execute, improve. When the papers were returned, mine had 2 letters written at the top in thick blue ink. Below it, see me after class. My stomach tightened. After lecture, I approached her desk. Adriana Cole, she said, flipping through my paper. Where did you learn to write like this? I revised it. I answered, a lot. She studied me over the rim of her glasses. You're working how many hours a week? 35, sometimes 40, and carrying a full course load. Yes, Professor. She closed the folder slowly. My parents aren't funding my education, I said evenly, so I fund it. No sympathy flickered across her face. Only assessment. You plan to stay at Brookhaven all 4 years. That's what I can afford. She tapped a finger against the paper. You're underutilized here. The word landed. Have you heard of the Hawthorne Fellowship? I nodded. 20 students nationwide. Full ride. National recognition. Commencement address at partner institutions. And you've already decided it's statistically unlikely, she said. It is. Statistics don't intimidate disciplined people. Silence stretched between us. I'm nominating you, she said finally. For Hawthorne. The words didn't feel dramatic. They felt precise. That's for students who stand out, I said carefully. You do, she replied. You just don't perform it. Then she leaned forward slightly. Potential means nothing if no one sees it. Let me help you be seen. For the first time since that night, in my father's living room, someone wasn't measuring me against my brother. She was measuring me against what I could become. And that changed the trajectory of everything. The Hawthorne application process lasted 3 months. 10 essays, 3 recommendation letters, 2 faculty interviews, 1 recorded leadership statement. I treated it like another job. Wake up, execute, refine. Professor Hart edited every draft with surgical precision. Remove the self-pity, she'd say. Replace it with ownership. So I did. When the finalist email arrived, I was walking to my 5 shift. I stopped on the sidewalk and read it twice. Out of 219 applicants, I was one of 50 finalists. Final round interview, New York City. My bank account balance blinked back at me like a warning. A last-minute flight would swallow half of it. Rent was due in 11 days. For a brief moment, I considered declining. Then I remembered something. Statistical improbability doesn't scare people who have already survived certainty. I took an overnight bus. 8 hours. No sleep. A borrowed blazer. Coffee that tasted like cardboard and resolve. The Hawthorne headquarters was all glass and marble. Other finalists arrived with parents. Tailored suits. Polished confidence. I arrived alone, and for the first time, I didn't feel smaller. I felt prepared. During the panel interview, one board member leaned forward. Why should we invest in you? 4 years ago, that question would have hollowed me out. Now, it clarified me. Because I don't rely on momentum, I said evenly. I build infrastructure. If it doesn't exist, I manufacture it. 2 weeks later, I received the email. Selected as a Hawthorne Fellow, full tuition, annual stipend, transfer eligibility to partner institutions. One of those institutions was Whitmore University, Ethan's school. If I transferred, I would graduate under Whitmore's honors designation. As a Hawthorne Fellow, I would deliver the commencement address. I made the decision that night, and I didn't tell my family, not my mother, not my father, not even Ethan. Senior year, I transferred quietly. 3 weeks into the semester, Ethan found me in the library. What are you doing here? He asked. Stunned. I transferred, I said calmly. Mom and Dad didn't mention it. They don't know. He stared at me. How are you paying for this? Hawthorne. Recognition flickered across his face. Why didn't you tell anyone? I closed my textbook. Did you ever ask how I was paying for Brookhaven? He opened his mouth, then stopped. That silence said enough. That night, my phone filled with missed calls. I silenced them. Whatever was coming would happen on my timeline. And in a few months, when Whitmore filled its stadium with 3,000 people, they would understand exactly what Hawthorne meant, all at once, with nowhere to look but forward. Graduation morning arrived with surgical clarity. Clear sky, no clouds. The kind of weather universities pray for when they print their brochures. Whitmore Stadium, seated 3,000. By 9 it was nearly full. Families moved in waves, flowers wrapped in cellophane. Programs fluttering like handheld fans. Camera lenses glinting in the sun. I entered through the faculty corridor. Black gown, gold honors sash. The Hawthorne medallion rested against my chest, understated. Unmistakable. I took my seat in the front honors section. 20 feet behind me, Ethan stood with the general graduates, laughing with friends. And in the front row of the audience, centered, composed, expectant, sat my parents. My father wore his navy suit, camera raised, lens angled precisely toward Ethan's section. My mother held a bouquet of white roses. She kept checking the printed schedule, tracking the moment she believed belonged to her son. They hadn't noticed me. The ceremony unfolded in careful stages, speeches, departmental recognitions, applause rising and falling like measured tides. Then the university president stepped to the podium. It is my honor to introduce this year's Valedictorian and Hawthorne Fellow, a student who has demonstrated exceptional resilience, academic distinction, and leadership. My father adjusted his camera again. Please join me in welcoming Adriana Cole. For half a second, nothing moved. Then I stood. 3,000 heads turned. From 20 feet away, I watched my father's hands freeze. The camera lowered not by choice, but by disbelief. My mother's bouquet tilted sideways. Confusion, recognition, calculation. Ethan's head snapped toward me. I walked to the podium. The applause began politely, then strengthened as the sash and medallion registered. I let it settle. Good morning, I said. My voice carried clean and steady. 4 years ago, I was told I wasn't worth the investment. Silence. I was told I was capable, but not exceptional. Disciplined, but not leadership material. I didn't look at them. I stopped trying to be impressive. I started trying to be consistent. I spoke about 4A, shifts, about studying in borrowed spaces, about building infrastructure instead of chasing validation. This degree isn't proof that someone believed in me, I continued. It's proof that I learned to believe in myself without permission. The wind lifted the edge of my sash. Your worth is not a projection. It is not a forecast calculated by someone else. A pause. You are not a low-yield asset. A ripple of quiet laughter, then stillness. You decide whether you build or wait to be chosen. When I finished, the applause wasn't polite. It was thunderous. Rows upon rows rose to their feet. As I stepped away from the podium, I didn't search for my parents. For the first time in my life, they weren't looking past me. They couldn't, and I wasn't proving them wrong. I was proving myself complete. The reception tent was loud. Champagne glasses. Polite laughter. Professors shaking hands like they had personally raised us. I was thanking the dean when I saw my parents moving toward me. Not walking. Pushing through. My father reached me first. Adriana. His voice sounded unfamiliar. Rougher. Why didn't you tell us? I accepted a glass of sparkling water before answering. Did you ever ask? His jaw tightened. That's not fair. Fair, I repeated calmly. You told me I wasn't worth the investment. I worked within that framework. My mother stepped forward. Mascara faintly smudged. We didn't know about the scholarship. If we had known. You did know, I said gently. You knew I was paying my own way. You just didn't think it would scale. My father flinched. Ethan hovered a few feet behind them. Quiet. I made a mistake, my father said. I said things I shouldn't have. You said what you believed. Silence. You transferred without telling us. He continued. You let us sit there today like fools. I didn't stage anything. I replied evenly. I accepted an opportunity. You could have called. So could you. That one settled between us. My mother reached for my arm. I stepped back, not aggressively. Just enough to redraw the line. I'm not angry, I said. That phase ended a long time ago. Then what are you? My father asked quietly. Independent. The word landed heavier than it sounded. What do you want from us? He asked. I considered it carefully. Nothing, I said. That's the point. No yelling. No humiliation. Just clarity. For the first time, I wasn't negotiating for approval. I was defining terms. 2 weeks after graduation, I moved to New York. A studio apartment. One window facing a brick wall. A kitchen barely wide enough to turn around in. The rent made my stomach tighten when I signed the lease. But the key in my hand felt earned. I started at a financial consulting firm entry level. Long hours. Endless spreadsheets. I loved the clarity of it. Input. Output. No emotional forecasting. 6 months in, I was promoted. A year later, I was placed on associate track. Ethan called 3 days after graduation. Mom hasn't stopped crying, he said. Dad barely talks. I'm not responsible for their emotional processing. I replied. A pause. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for not noticing, for benefiting from it. You didn't design the system, I said. You operated inside it. That's not an excuse. It's context. We started meeting for coffee when he visited the city. Awkward at first. 2 adults learning what siblinghood looks like without comparison attached. 6 months later, my father called. I was wrong, he said. No framing. No justification. I know, I answered. I can't rewrite 4 years. It's not my job to tell you how to repair something you broke. Silence. I'm willing to talk, I added. But we're not pretending it didn't happen. We won't, he said. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. 2 years later, they visited my apartment. My mother cried when she saw how small it was. My father looked around quietly. This is yours, he said. He nodded once. I underestimated you. That wasn't new, I replied. We aren't a perfect family now. We're honest. And honesty is the first investment that's ever meant anything. I used to think success would feel loud like fireworks. It didn't. It felt quiet, like standing in my apartment at night. City noise humming outside. Knowing every piece of furniture inside existed because I built toward it. For years, I thought love was something you earned. It isn't. Worth isn't assigned. It's recognized. And if no one recognizes it, you still have it. The day I stopped competing for approval was the day I became free. Not from my family, from needing them to validate me. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever been underestimated by the very people who were supposed to believe in you, type "I'm enough" in the comments. Not for me, for yourself, and subscribe for more stories about resilience, boundaries, and rebuilding on your own terms. This story was created by a creative team for entertainment purposes only. It is not intended as advice or encouragement to replicate any actions depicted.